We continue in Chapter 4, Body Organization and Homeostasis. In the first part, we use the term tissue, which describes a group of cells that work together to serve a common function. An organ is composed of two or more different tissues that work together to perform a specific function. And an organ system is the term used to describe a composure of organs with a common function. And the human body includes 11 major organ systems. We will briefly review as we will be covering these throughout the semester. The integumentary system is an important system. An important function of the skin is to help regulate body temperature. As our body temperature increases, the brain signals the sweat glands to increase their activity. Evaporation of the perspiration lowers the body's temperature. However, if the water is not replaced, the water balance between cells and blood is upset. Additionally, if the loss of salts from perspiration is not restored, the alteration to the blood's chemistry can alter metabolic reactions. So the skin is the largest organ system. It protects underlying tissues, provides for skin sensation, allowing us to touch, protect us from receptors, pain receptors located. It helps to regulate body temperature, as just discussed, as well as responsible for synthesizing vitamin D we obtain from the sunlight. The skeleton system provides for the attachment of muscles. It serves as a protection of internal organs, stores calcium and phosphorus, and produces blood cells in the red bone marrow. Muscular system moves body, maintains posture, internal transport of fluids, as previously discussed, on helping to return the vein systems, helping return blood back to the heart, as well as it's our primary generator of body heat. The nervous system regulates and integrates our body functions via neurons. The endocrine system regulates and integrates body functions via hormones to maintain homeostasis. Cardiovascular system transport nutrients, transport oxygen, serves as a medium for carbon dioxide to return to the blood. Return via the blood to the lungs to be exhaled, as well as it serves to transport heat, transport immune cells and antibodies, hormones, and helps to regulate the pH of the body fluids. The lymphatic system returns tissue fluids to the bloodstream and aids in the protection against infection and disease. Respiratory system is going to exchange respiratory gases with the environment. It's going to bring in oxygen to bind to hemoglobin to be carried to the cells and tissues of the body, as well as the respiratory system will exhale the carbon dioxide produced as a byproduct of cellular respiration to the external environment. Digestive system is both the physical and chemical, mechanical and chemical breakdown of food, and it serves to absorb, process, and also store our food. Urinary system maintains a constant internal environment through the excretion of nitrogenous waste, and reproductive system produces and releases egg and sperm cells, produces and secretes hormones. In females will house the developing embryo, and also in females mammary glands will produce milk to nourish the offspring. Most of our organs are suspended in internal cavities, and these cavities protect these vital organs and allow them to slide past one another and change shape, such as the lungs, the stomach, the urinary bladder. There are two main body cavities, the ventral, which means towards the abdomen, and the dorsal, which means towards the back. The ventral cavity can be subdivided into the thoracic cavity, and the abdominal cavity. The thoracic cavity can be further subdivided into the pleural cavities containing the lungs and the pericardial cavity containing the heart. The abdominal cavity contains the digestive system, the urinary system, and the reproductive system. The diaphragm serves to separate the thoracic and the abdominal cavity. The dorsal cavity can be divided into the cranial and spinal cavity. The cranial cavity encloses the brains, whereas the spinal cavity houses the spinal cord. So this shows the ventral cavity, the thoracic cavity containing the lungs, shows your muscle, the diaphragm, that separates these two cavities, and the pericardial cavity located there in the center on the top image, which contains the heart. The ventral cavity, again, it shows you the image of the thoracic cavity, the diaphragm separating the thoracic from the abdominal cavity. Membranes cover body cavities and organ surfaces. These membranes form physical barriers that protect underlying tissues, and the body has 4 types of membranes: mucous membranes, serous membranes, synovial membranes, and cutaneous membranes. Membranes are merely just sheets of epithelium supported by connective tissue. Mucous membranes line passages that open to the exterior of the body and secrete mucus, such as the respiratory, digestive, reproductive, and urinary tract. Individuals taking medication that block the synthesis of mucus would probably result in that individual producing more colds and respiratory infections, because this mucus helps to trap debris that's inhaled, including bacterial or viruses, and expel them before they get to the delicate tissues of the lungs. Mucous membranes in the small intestine are specialized for absorption. In the respiratory tract, they act to trap bacteria and viruses that could lead to illnesses. Serous membranes line the thoracic and abdominal cavities and the organs within them. They secrete a fluid that acts as a lubricant, which reduces the friction between organs within the cavity. Synovial membranes line the cavities of freely movable joints, such as that of the knee. The fluid that they produce can ease friction and also act as a lubricant. Cutaneous membrane is the skin, and it covers the outside of the body. Unlike other membranes, it is thick, relatively waterproof, and dry. The integumentary system is composed of the skin, derivatives of the skin, such as the hair, nails, sweat glands, wax glands, and oil glands. The skin is the largest organ system, and is considered an organ because the skin and its components function together in bodily processes. Functions of the skin is that it protects against bacterial invasion, ultraviolet radiation, as well as physical and chemical insult. It prevents water loss. This is due to the keratin contained in the outermost layer of the skin. It helps regulate body temperature. It has sweat gland and also muscles, pili erector muscles, that allow the hair on our skin to raise up, which in cold weather you've experienced the hair raising up. Well, that also helps to conserve body heat. It synthesizes vitamin D through sunlight. Individuals that use a really effective sunscreen might be less likely to make vitamin D, because sunlight is responsible for vitamin D synthesis. Another function of the skin is that it receives stimuli such as touch, pressure, heat, and also serves as an organ of excretion. The skin has primarily two layers, the epidermis and the dermis. The epidermis is the thin outer layer, and the dermis is the thicker inner layer that contains the nerves, glands, and blood vessels. The epidermis consists of several layers of epithelial cells. It has no blood vessels. The epidermis is composed of dead skin cells that are shed at a rate of almost 30 to 40,000 each minute. These dead skin cells absorb water, giving them that wrinkled effect in water that we have. Keratin is a protein. It's a tough fibrous protein that gradually replaces the cytoplasmic contents of the cell as it's pushed up from the dermis layer. Approximately 2 weeks to a month pass from the time a new cell is formed to the time it is shed. Lipid-soluble materials are able to cross the lipid cell membranes of the epidermis. Thus is why patches such as nicotine patches, pain patches, and birth control patches work. The epidermis outer surface, as said, is made up of the dead cells. It's gradually replaced as they're pushed up from the dermis, and it has the protective properties that come from keratin. The dermis consists primarily of connective tissue. It is the layer that has blood vessels, nerves, sweat, and oil glands, as well as hair follicles. The dermis is a much thicker layer and more complex. The dermis does not wear away. It's not replaced. The collagen and elastic fibers found in the lower layer allows the skin to stretch and return to its original shape. Resiliency of the dermis decreases with age. Collagen fibers begin to stiffen and decrease in numbers. Elastic fibers thicken and lose elasticity. This typically begins in the late 40s and is attributed with the signs that we see of aging and the wrinkles in the skin. The hypodermis is a layer of loose connective tissue that lies beneath the dermis and functions to anchor the skin to the body, to the organs underneath. Its functions includes protection, temperature regulation, and fat storage. The hypodermis contains half of the body's fat storage. So this shows the layers. You see the epidermis up at the top. This is that layer of dead skin cells. It does contain the protein keratin, which gives us our waterproofing ability. But you see how thick the dermis is. That's where the oil glands or sebaceous glands are. It contains your blood vessels, hair follicles, and then the hypodermis is the small layer up underneath. It's is a layer of loose connective tissue acting to function to anchor the skin. Skin color is determined by blood flow as well as the distribution and quantity of the pigment melanin. Melanin is produced by specialized cells known as melanocytes at the base of the epidermis. So melanin is just a pigment protein, and so our genetics are largely going to determine our skin color. Melanin comes basically in two forms, yellow to red and black to brown, and black to brown is the most common. When an individual tans, the melanocytes respond to the ultraviolet radiation and thus increase the production of melanin, thus the increased darkening of the skin. The dermis gives rise to many diverse structures: hair follicles, nails, oil glands, sweat glands, and wax glands. Hair, the primary function is protection. It protects the head from ultraviolet radiation. The nostrils and ears, hairs trap particles. Eyebrows and eyelashes help keep out particles, help keep out glare, as well as keep water from the eyes. Hair has oil glands that help keep the hair soft and pliant. You have the rectipili muscle attached to a hair follicle, acts to conserve heat, such as when we get very cold, that hair will stand up on our skin. Hair grows over most of the body. Its components include a shaft, which extends above the skin surface, and the root, which extends into the dermis or the hypodermis, where it's embedded in a hair follicle. Nails serve to protect the tips of her toes and fingers. Because nails are embedded in very sensitive tissue, they also function as a type of sensory antenna. Nails are also used to manipulate objects, such as untying shoelaces. Oil glands produce oily substances, an oily substance known as sebum. These oil glands are found all over the body except the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. And so sebum is the substance that lubricates hair and skin and contains substances that inhibit bacterial growth. Acne results when an oil gland becomes blocked and sebum accumulates. This blockage allows bacteria to invade the gland and hair follicle that results in acne. Sweat glands produce sweat, helping the regulation of body temperature, as well as the helps to some metabolic wastes are excreted in sweat. Wax glands are modified sweat glands. They're found in the external ear canal. Again, the wax protects the ear by trapping small particles from going further into the ear canal. Homeostasis is the term used to describe the relatively constant internal condition required for our life. It depends on the nervous and endocrine systems, which respond to internal communication. Homeostasis is primarily maintained through negative feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanism is a corrective measure that slow or reverse a variation from a normal value, a set point for our body, such as 98.6 temperature. Once the normal value is reached, corrective measures cease. Positive feedback mechanisms, on the other hand, cause a change that promotes continued change in the same direction. Examples of positive feedback would be the contractions from childbirth, where they continually progress, or nursing. A mother, when she was nursing a child, that would be another example of positive feedback. But the primary mechanism to maintain homeostasis is negative feedback mechanisms, where corrective measures are going to be taken that are either going to slow or reverse that variation from a normal value. Homeostatic mechanisms have three components: a receptor, the control center, such as the brain, and an effector, which can be such as a muscle or a gland. The receptor acts to detect a change in the internal or external environment. The control center integrates the information coming from the receptors and selects the appropriate response. The effector, the muscle, the gland, carries out the response. So this just shows our set point on the seesaw, variable factor to be controlled in homeostasis. So in step 1, A receptor detects a change, it could be internal or external, and sends information to the control center, being the brain. So a receptor is, in this case, a sensory, is going to sense some change. The control center, the brain, is going to integrate this information from the receptors and direct the appropriate response. And in 3, the effector brings about the necessary adjustment. Looking at the picture, an example we might could use would be glucose. Say after we eat and the glucose level is high, then receptors are going to sense this change that glucose levels have increased. It's going to prompt the pancreas to release its hormone, insulin, which is going to take the glucose from the bloodstream and store it as glycogen, or could be stored as fat in adipose tissue, bringing it back to the normal, to the set point, that variable factor to be controlled, in this case glucose. On the other hand, if glucose levels were in short supply in the bloodstream, which we need glucose to as a component of cellular respiration, the hormone glucagon would be released, prompting the breakdown of this stored glucose of glycogen into products of glucose that could be used for the body. So this gives an example of a homeostatic regulation of body temperature by negative feedback. In this system, the receptor will be a thermoreceptor, which thermoreceptors sense temperature change. The control center is going to be the hypothalamus, which is just a region, a structure within the brain. And the effectors are going to be the sweat glands, the blood vessels in the skin, and skeleton muscles. So in this example, it shows normal body temperature. So if the body temperature rises above normal, that's an imbalance. Thermoreceptors deep within the body are going to send a message to the hypothalamus in the brain. Thermoreceptors in the skin are also sending messages to the brain. The brain is going to send messages to the blood vessels in the skin to widen, taking more of this heat to the skin surface. It's also going to increase the activity of the sweat glands. That's going to allow for this heat to be disseminated outside the body. In a period when the temperature level drops, again, this is going to be an imbalance. So again, this is going to be sensed by thermoreceptors in the skin and thermoreceptors deep within the body. Again, if the temperature dropped to, say, 96 degrees, it's going to cause the blood vessels in the skin to contract. It's going to cause our skeleton muscles to begin shivering, because skeleton muscles are a primary generator of body heat. So this shivering motion allows our muscles to generate heat, which is going to act to raise that body temperature back up to the normal body temperature, and again restore homeostasis. Hypothermia is just a term used to describe abnormally elevated body temperature. Hyper, anytime you see hyper, that's going to be in excess. Hypothermia can occur if mechanisms for lower and higher than normal body temperatures might fail. Hypothermia, on the other hand, is abnormally low body temperature. So anytime you see hypo, that's going to mean below. And hypothermia can occur if body temperature drops too far. Either of these conditions, hypothermia or hypothermia, can be life-threatening if the body is not able to correct